Welcome to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and Thisday Live begins now. Coming up in the next hour, in an interview with the Hausa Service of the BBC, President Muhammadu Buhari's nephew, Mamman Daura, calls for zoning of the presidency to be jettisoned in favor of competence. Following widespread reactions, the presidency distances itself, saying its views did not reflect that of President Buhari or the administration. And in response to the latest wave of deadly attacks in the northwest and northeast of Nigeria, President Buhari maintains that his administration has done its best in fighting insecurity. Since the return of liberal democracy in Nigeria in 1999, the nation's political leadership has been rotated between the southern and northern parts of the country. This unwritten arrangement has played a key role in determining who emerges the president in the largely ethno-religious sensitive nation of Nigeria. The principle was designed to ensure that no section of the country is permanently excluded from power and that no political party is seen to only represent one part of the country. However, last Tuesday, President Muhammadu Buhari's nephew, Alhaji Mamman Daura, who is reputed to be one of the most influential persons in this administration, ruffled feathers when he said the zoning arrangement for the 2023 general election in Nigeria should be jettisoned and the next president should emerge on the basis of competence. Expectedly, his comment on the Hausa Service of the BBC did not go down well with several socio-political groups, especially from the south, claiming that Daura's statement had the endorsement of the presidency. But in a swift riposte at the weekend, the presidency distanced itself from Daura's remarks, insisting that it was his personal view and did not reflect that of the president or his administration. Joining us now to speak on the foundation of the zoning formula and its implication for political parties in the forthcoming elections is a man of many parts, Mr. Odia Ofeimo. He's a renowned poet, social critic, a former member of the editorial board of the Guardian newspapers in Lagos, former chairman of the editorial board of the News magazine, former president of the Association of Nigerian Authors. He was also once the private secretary of the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Odia Ofeimo, thank you for joining us on Thisday Live and welcome to the show. Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Very good. Welcome to Thisday Live. Well, you must have listened to my introduction. I started by referring to the statement made by the president's nephew, Mamman Daura, about the need to jettison rotational presidency and opt for competence in 2023 presidential election. Well, he's not the first person to bring up this issue. As you will recall, it was a major issue even during the political bureau that was set up by former president of Nigeria, General Ibrahim Babangida. It was also an issue in 1996, even resulting in a book that year by your friend and brother, Dr. Anthony Akinola, who wrote a book titled Rotational Presidency. In the year 2000, the Patriots insisted on rotational presidency. But in 2019, we had Malam Nasir El-Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State, saying that, look, we should forget about rotational presidency and opt for competence. And now we have Mamman Daura saying the same thing. Now, what is this all about? Is this about the leadership question in Nigeria, or all the persons saying we should jettison rotational principle are merely expressing an opinion of their own that we can just conveniently ignore?
Well, let's begin by saying the presidency has already averred that Mamman Daura is expressing a personal opinion, not an opinion of the presidency. But every student of politics and every watcher of political activities in Nigeria would know that it is about game theory. When political science talk about the rotational syndrome in a political process, they know that different and unequal groups will seek, even within a rotational system, to be always in front of the routine. In the Nigerian situation, since 1950, when the first All Nigerian Conference took place, the tendency has always been for those who consider themselves in front to want to start every process of rotation, and to want that process of rotation to have only that dominant group in front. By the time we got to the military regime of General Olusegun Obasanjo, it was clear that those who had always held power wanted to continue holding power. The idea of a rotation was actually a manner of ensuring that power will not shift. The zoning that was then applied, the zoning that was then applied was meant by its proponents to ensure that the hegemonic group would produce the president. And you also know that when a hegemonic group produces the leader, it ensures that it creates on the ground patterns that will aid reproducibility of power. What is happening today with Mamman Daura and El Rufai saying that there should no longer be zoning is a way of ensuring that the pattern that always existed would continue. This may sound like jumping the gun in this discussion, but it is important for us to not forget that those who are asking for the removal of a zoning pattern have already enjoyed it several times, and on each occasion, they created on the ground a basis for ensuring that when another round comes, the region that produced leadership initially will produce another leadership. Now, what I think we should bear in mind is that in 1960, although the Governor General of Nigeria was Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Prime Minister was executive, and the Prime Minister was from the North. The system produced a government that handed most of the offices to Eastern Nigeria. But the powers that were in place, the hegemonic powers, they ensure that all the big deals of the system, the commanding heights of politics and economics, was in the hands of the NPC. That process helped to build a basis for ensuring that the military, the electricity, the railway, and all what you may consider the commanding heights of the Nigerian economy and politics belonged to zones that the NPC controlled. So if you talk about zoning, in Nigeria, we need to be careful. It is not always the case that zoning follows a zoning pattern. It has never been respected in a serious sense. And I will explain it a little further by reminding all of us that when Obasanjo became head of state the first time, it was an accident. When Shagari became president of Nigeria, and it was roundly suspected that he was misusing power in a manner that would cause a revolt against Northern leadership, there was a coup, which is to say, the coup brought back leadership to the North. Each time there was going to be such a deal, it was always done in such a way that the controllers of power would claim it back, which was why it became a big deal for people to shout, power shift, power shift. Even some people had to wear special caps to show they really meant for the power to shift. When MKO Abiola ran and won, it was made very clear from the beginning by some powers in Nigeria that he would not be allowed to take office. Now, it had happened to MKO in the Second Republic. When he thought it was his turn to take power, he was not allowed to. This second time, when he roundly won the election, he was also told that there was no vacancy for him to access power. If you look at it from that angle, and the fact that all those who came after, including Goodluck Jonathan, came by accident, you will agree that the idea of a rotational syndrome in power in Nigeria has never really been a straightforward issue.
Well, at this point, there are some people...
Now, when somebody now says we no longer need a rotational presidency, what they're actually saying is, let what has always been the pattern continue as normality.
Okay,
because
if I may come in here.
We have to be very careful about it.
If I may come in here.
There is no way you continue with the existing electoral census and party patterns in Nigeria.
Well, Audio Femo.
And power would not go on the way it has been going.
Let me draw your attention to something else. I mean, for the same reasons that you have articulated, there are some people who argue that if the rotational principle, if it complements federalism, if it will prevent ethnic hegemons just imposing their will again and again on Nigerians, will it not be better to move from rotational principle being an informal arrangement to make it a constitutional matter and then amend the constitution accordingly? Do you share that view?
If you amend the constitution, the question will arise how the rotation should proceed. Where should it begin? It began from the north. As I said, it moved to the south in virtual error. And it continued in the South, also in virtual error. If you know the way Nigerians have always managed to upturn straightforward arrangements, you will agree that it is no longer the agreement that determines what happens. It is the structure of power and how it has been arranged or disarranged that determines who takes over. Now that we can say in Nigeria that every president who comes to power manages to redesign Nigeria away from constitutional formalities, it frightens very many people. It means that when you allow one part of Nigeria to produce the president, they will redesign foreign relations, they will redesign the economic system in a way that can push resources to their own zones, such that even if you allow the zoning system to continue, the powers on the ground that determine what happens in the country will always be in favor of one direction. I want us not to forget in this regard that when the electoral system in Nigeria was created, and since it was created in the First Republic, whoever became the boss of the Electoral Commission was always overdetermined by political structures on the ground that nobody could do anything about. In fact, it began after the very first electoral officer. It meant that only minority groups were allowed to become heads of the electoral commissions. When that had to change, it changed in a manner that put power where it always was. So don't let us beat about the bush. The only thing that makes zoning looks good is because there are people still talking about restructuring. If you do not restructure Nigeria, it doesn't matter how you zone. Those who are clamoring for either an Igbo president or a president from wherever, they are falling into the trap of helping to elect near slave personages who will be in power, but other people will be ruling.
Okay, I get your point. And Afenifere and other groups, including PANDEF, they are also calling for restructuring. But there was another point raised by Mamman Daura, competence. How do we define competence in the context of Nigerian politics? Competence in relation to what? The economy, governance, national security? Do you want to comment on that?
To leave the concept of competence nebulous is precisely what is required for any agreement reached not to work. If you leave it nebulous, it means you can fit dimensions into it, which all of us can define the way we like. And let's be honest about it. If you put somebody from a particular zone in power or in an office, you are training that office for the future. If the zonal system that had taken place was a biased one, it means that people who may not have been qualified at all for anything are given offices where, first of all, they gain visibility, then they get the impression, they are able to give the impression of having acted well. They may not do anything while in office. Other people will do the job and they will claim centrality and therefore affirm a notion of competence that only they can continue to define. Let's be honest, the person who determines competence is not a member of a cabal. It is not a cabal that determines competence in a democracy. It is a role that the generality of the people confer on somebody. For God's sake, even if the man is not competent, he may have a skill that the masses like. Even if it is just being able to smile. If they like the way he smiles, and it is for that reason they choose to vote for him, let them vote for him. For a Kaba to sit there and tell us this is the one who is competent and this other one is not competent, well, you can play that role within a political party. But for the country at large, it does not make sense to say that you are choosing somebody for competence. The vote that I carry should determine whom I regard as competent. And that is not something that falls within the ambit of any particular power group. But what they are suggesting is actually a case, of allowing some cabal unknown to the rest of us to determine who can become president of Nigeria. I think that there's something very, very wrong about that.
Okay, quickly, I mean, you aligned with the position that restructuring is the way forward. But of course, we've had different definitions of restructuring from a cross-section of Nigeria.
Yes.
What kind of restructuring would you like to see? Quickly. We have just about 4 minutes.
Let's put it this way. The real crisis in Nigeria is supposed to be our diversity. And therefore, the founding fathers decided that for Nigeria to be well run, we need a federal system so that self-governance will be possible for individual nationalities within Nigeria or individual regions within Nigeria in a manner that ensures you do not have a monolithic principle, a hegemonic principle as the determinant of what happens in the struggle for power. But what we have discovered is that under the enforced zoning, which consistently reproduces monolithic power structures, no group outside the power structure that exists is allowed to take ultimate decisions. Because that is the case, people are believing that you need to shift from one place to the other. But there is an alternative approach which simply says, first of all, let every state or group in Nigeria have control of the resources around its geopolitical frame or geocultural frame in such a manner that power will not be so concentrated in the center that it becomes the only direction of the pursuit of power. Now, many people do not want federalism to work so that their zoning will always produce monolithism. If we really want to save Nigeria, we must ensure that, first of all, federalism works. And there is a way in which federalism can be designed for it to work. The way it was defined by, the way restructuring was defined by El-Rufai for his political party, APC, is to say that when you restructure, you no longer allow for indigeneity, and you no longer allow for state of origin. That is a disastrous way of ensuring that unitarism, rather than federalism, will be the order of the day. The reason is this. Federalism itself is based on a notion of pluralism.
Correct, quite correct. Well,
the notion of pluralism means that...
conclude that sentence before... Just
to add this sentence.
Yes.
A notion of pluralism means that indigenship is respected enough to be provided with a self-governing principle.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. On that note, we'll have to go. I know we can continue for the next 1 hour. Thank you very much for joining us, Odia Ofemo. We'll take a short break now here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the program will continue. Don't go away. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio now, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. I also have Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Chike C. Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State. Prof. Yemi, Chike, welcome to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. Well, in the last 20-something minutes, I've been having a conversation with Odia Ofemo on the issue of rotational presidency and the zoning formula, which is an informal arrangement. And he had a lot to say. I'm sure you listened to him about how zoning that we all talk about as a recognition of cleavages and diversity is in actual fact a way of promoting monolithic power arrangements and promoting the interests of one part of the country and of a cabal. And he had a lot to say also about federalism, restructuring, and then the issue of competence, which he says only the people of Nigeria can determine what constitutes competence and not an individual or a cabal. The people should be allowed to make their own choices. Prof, let me start with you. What's your reaction to some of those points raised about competence, zoning, rotational presidency?
I like the submission of Odia Ofemo because he tried to present the issue very scientifically as a problematic. I found it interesting because it raises the issue of psychology of human differences. Tanko Yakasai, in his interview, I think published in today's Thisday, he said that the concept of zoning was introduced to the political lexicon in Nigeria under the NPN regime, all right, when Shehu Shagari was president. Now, from Odia Ofemo, he traced the genesis back to 1951, which is quite interesting that at least the idea of zoning has been there. So for research students, I think we can begin to have a new idea there. The second point is that Ofemo made it clear that zoning itself, contrary to the presentation of Tanko Yakasai, is actually meant to ensure change in continuity. Mm-hmm. In which case, look, the power that is there, you talk about zoning in such a way that there is continuity of the same power, really. Which now is the problematic. How do you now deal with that? It is within this particular framework now that the issue of competence, who determines competency, and so now, so now we are now saying that from the perspective of Ofemo, Nigerians are the eligible people, legitimate people, to define who is competent. But you see, why I like the argument of Mamman Daura, as distinct from the presentation, is that, look, Mamman Daura is telling us directly that President Muhammadu Buhari has failed. That zoning that brought him into power had failed and is now trying to find a new argument for the continuity. So Buhari has failed. That's why he's now coming with a new argument. There are other considerations. For instance, if you want to look at it critically, when you talk about zoning, you are talking about zoning. Now, a zone, you still have constituents there.
Within a zone.
If you have the best in a zone, that best candidate is not necessarily the best overall in Nigeria.
Okay, Prof. On that note, let me quickly calling Chike Ogea. Chike, one of the points made by Audio Ofemo is about federalism. He was talking about resource control, a center that is not as attractive as it is. And I'm sure you will be interested in this subject of resource control.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it was very, very, very informative assertions that were made by Mr. Ofemo. I mean, I wouldn't expect any list from him because he's been a central part of the country. As they say where I come from, when a child climbs a tree, there are certain things he cannot see, you know, that the elder will see sitting down. So the truth is that he's spoken with a lot of experience. And if you listen to the things he didn't say, those were more of the important things than the things he said. You know, resource control, zoning, you know, and I think that's the pitfall we had always fallen into in Nigeria. Those are not...
I'm hearing from Ruben's own.
Those are basically not the issues. Because as we can see from that presentation, these things are also amorphous, and you can say it and mean a different thing. You don't have to say you oppose zoning when actually you do, or you don't have to say you want zoning when actually you don't. So these are the kind of things that go on in Nigeria, and that is why, if you asked me, Rufai, you know, the people from the north, basically, like he said, they want to always have the first shot, and they have built this hegemonic structures, he said, which is going to be there in perpetuity. So whether you are doing resource control for the people that have the resources or not, they in Abuja will continue to determine how those resources are divided. So whether we like it or not, Simon Kolawole today talked about what he called merit-based federal character, because you see, when they talk about zoning, I don't think they understand what the larger context means. It means everything about quota system, everything about federal character also goes with it. So you can't have children coming from one part of the country scoring 40% and getting more places in university than children that scored 80% because they had more people that had higher than 80%. So all those things that are not uniform will become uniform. But when we come to your particular question, which is the issue of resource control, I think those can only be gotten in a framework of when this country is restructured. And that is why whatever we say, that has always been my consistent position, that you cannot get development from a top-down approach. It has to be bottom-up.
Okay, Chike, well, having said that, let me quickly invite Yemi to make our own comments about this zoning, rotational presidency, merit and competence.
And plenty of things.
Yes.
I'll take maybe three things. Number one, I definitely agree with Uncle Odia in the sense that it is ironic that it's when it's the northern part of the country who's in power that they suddenly realize that zoning is not useful. As you said, Prof, that when the zoning brought you into power. So you suddenly realize zoning is not useful when it's technically the turn of the South for the presidency to go into, which for me belies your intent. Secondly, the whole issue of a center that is so powerful. I mean, we've seen over the last 2 weeks just billions and billions being stolen and looted by a structure that actually enables it and supports it. So we're setting up interventionist commissions that don't have a timeline, don't have deliverables. However, and everybody is looking to Abuja. So for the most part, we've so shifted this whole notion of governance that Buhari is at fault for everything, the center is at fault. But if we decentralize power and allow states and regions to determine, as Chike was saying, what your cutoff point is, what your parameters of engagement are, then if I decide that I don't want to live in Lagos, I want to go and live in Anambra State, and there are terms of engagement with moving to Anambra, then that's my choice. But we can't deny people who are indigenous of particular parts of the country supposedly be doing federal character that's not fair, and then still saying that zoning is not really required. So if we want to move forward, let's have the conversation about zoning after a southerner has become president in 2023. Then we can talk about zoning. And as we're talking about zoning in that context, then we're talking about restructuring in a way that makes sense. Because And I mean, we keep dancing around this issue until every Nigerian feels like they have equal access to opportunities, equal access to the resources of the state, equal access to security in this country. Then the whole issue of because fundamentally we zone because we distrust ourselves. And we keep saying it. We've seen the pattern from Obasanjo to Jonathan as leaders of this country. You cannot look at their parts of this country and say they developed it any better than the other. You can't say Bayelsa is suddenly Dubai. Neither can you say Obasanjo did anything to Ogun State. Neither can you say Yar'Adua did anything to Katsina. But we still say zoning because we suddenly feel, and it's the same thing we do with state-level elections, same level we do with House of Rep or legislative elections. We believe that if it's from our era, it means things will come to us. But it just shows that in saying that, we admit that the system is not fair. So we hope that in zoning it to ourselves, it makes it better. But we've seen over and over again that it really does nothing in effect. But however, let's have that conversation after a southerner is president, while we talk about how we actually want to fundamentally shift the way Nigeria works to benefit all Nigerians.
Well, let's see. We'll have that conversation.
Indeed.
And I guess the conversation has started already.
That's right.
And I guess it's useful for, everyone's sanity, that we can talk about our problems. But we need to move on.
Zoning wouldn't solve Nigeria's problem.
At all.
Well, as the problems arise, we will deal with them.
With or without zoning, there will not be any solution to the problem because candidates must emerge on the basis of political parties.
Well,
so you won't get the best.
The big challenge that we face is one of leadership.
Indeed.
Hopefully someday we'll get the right kind of leaders at all levels.
Someday.
Let's take on another very important topic in the course of the week. Last week was yet again fraught with reports of unending insecurity across the northern part of Nigeria. From the deadly attacks in southern Kaduna caused by communal violence and impunity to the multiple attacks in Maiduguri on Salah Eve, and the most shocking of them all, the attack on the Borno State governor's convoy by insurgents. Following the attack, the governor accused the military in Baga town, where the incident took place, of sabotage, stating that there were no Boko Haram insurgents in the area. He further put the exact number of military personnel in the area at 1,181 and wondered how they were unable to stop a handful of Boko Haram members from occupying the town. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Senate Committee on the Army, Senator Ali Ndume, faulted the federal government's amnesty program for repentant Boko Haram insurgents. The lawmaker, representing Borno South, alleged that most of the insurgents recently integrated into the community had gone back to their old ways, noting that the government should have started by rehabilitating the victims before investing massively on the so-called repentant terrorists. All of this came as President Buhari expressed the view that Nigerians were aware that his administration had done its best in fighting insecurity, even though he did acknowledge that the military could do more.
What we inherited when we came 2015 was Boko Haram northeast and the militants in the south. Nigerians know that we have done our best. What is coming up in northwest and north central is very, very disturbing indeed. But I believe the military and the police and other law enforcement agencies, from the report I'm getting, I think they could do much better.
President Muhammadu Buhari there, with the rising spate of violent attacks against innocent citizens and the mounting death toll, do Nigerians share the view that this administration has done its best to improve security nationwide? Yemi, let me start with you. President Buhari says Nigerians know that we have done our best. Do you agree?
I think that for me is just a really blatant admission of failure. Because if this is your best, and 100+ citizens die in a particular region, in southern Kaduna specifically, and that's just one region of the country, that speaks to incompetence. Now, they've been asking him to fire. I mean, my T-shirt clearly says Nigerian Lives Matter with a splatter of blood. I hope the people watching can see that.
I can see that.
But I think if the president of Nigeria and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces says on his own, that he believes that Nigerians know. He's saying that they've done their best. But so your best shows that you are incompetent to stop killing. So, and which is why I think it gives credence to the whole notion of firing service chiefs. But more importantly, though, and really for those who are asking for him to be impeached, because ultimately the Constitution does say that the primary responsibility of government shall be the security and welfare of the people. So if by your own admission you are unable to secure the people, should that not mean that they should relieve you of your job? But I'm saying that, but I'm also actually saying it quite seriously, because President Buhari on one hand, and I would particularly take on Malam El-Rufai as well on the other hand, I'm very clear that Malam El-Rufai is not responsible for the military, neither is he responsible for the police. There are over 15 military installations in Kaduna. However, if you put a particular community under a 24-hour lockdown, are you not inviting them to be slaughtered? And then the presidency has the audacity to call it revenge killings. I don't care if it's revenge killings, banditry, miscreants, whatever the heck you want to call it. The simple point is that people are being killed. And if, as the duty bearers for the people in Kaduna and other parts of the country, you're unable to do something about it, then that causes for concern. And Malam El-Rufai, I have not heard him say that, look, I'm not in control of the military, neither am I in control of the police, but my people are being slaughtered. When the people of northern Kaduna, there was an issue there, Malam El-Rufai apologized for his inability to protect them. I have not heard him apologize for his inability to protect the people in southern Kaduna, and that for me raises serious concerns.
Well, Chike, is the president's best good enough?
Well, I think the jury is out on that. Maybe you should do a voice pop for Nigerians to determine that. But the truth is that, obviously, you know, if people are dying the way people are dying all over the country, we have a governor's convoy being attacked that brazenly, then obviously there's no way you can say the president is doing enough or the government is doing enough. You see, if we begin to looking at these issues, you know, from the micro perspective, talking about service chiefs being relieved of their appointments and all of that, that to my mind is not where I think the issue is. As long as the structure above the service chief, which really is with the commander-in-chief, is the way it is, I don't think anything will change. That is the truth of the matter. I think Nigerians, we have to look, do you people ever imagine for one day if this was a southern president who was a Christian and all this was going on? If this, what is happening today, at least when Jonathan was there, we never heard about any governor's convoy being attacked in that kind of manner. So, you see, it comes back to what my big brother Odia was saying earlier on. There is no good faith in any of these things. It's all about our people. So when my people do it this way, it has to be right, no matter whose ox is God and no matter who suffers for it. They are even ready themselves to take all this beating and all these debts just to protect their own. So, you know, when we have a system like this, you begin to wonder that how really can we ever change this place? I think it's just a terrible nightmare what's going on in Nigeria today. And I really, really am scared for the future of this country. That is the truth. Because we're not telling each other the truth. That's the bottom line.
Professor Akintanewa, what is the truth? Does anyone know what the truth is with regard to the security situation in the country?
I think we know part of the truth. Okay? Let's go back to Goodluck Jonathan. I will repeat, he told us in government there are Boko Haramis. First point. Second point, a person like Olusegun Obasanjo, who does not speak, recklessly, has told us that there is an agenda of Fulanization in the country. Nobody is addressing that. It's part of the truth. The governor of Borno State told us that there are no Boko Haramis in Baga, that the attack was simply a sabotage. What does that mean? He's frontally accusing the military,
Yep.
the leadership.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's part of the truth
Yep.
that we do know. Now, the implication of that when you link that one to Fulanization, Mr. President's speech is declaratory. It's a declaratory policy, which is quite different from operational policy, empirical evidence that is on ground. So in this case, we are faced with a manner of truth we know of, but which we refuse to address. In this particular case, if you have a Fulanization agenda, and you now have a situation whereby the government is keeping silent on all these killings, only to admit that you have done your best, I won't blame him if he says he has done his best, if his government has done his best. But who determines the best? That's the best according to President Muhammadu Buhari. The best is not good for the people of Nigeria because the killings have become recidivist. So, in addressing Nigeria's problem, especially this issue of insecurity, there is no way we wouldn't come back to this issue of restructuring and federalism. Federalism in the sense that you are able to manage yourself within the framework of a well-defined autonomy. Then you leave foreign affairs, national defense to the federal government. Anything short of that, I think we are deceiving ourselves. And it's most unfortunate that the president, a former senior military officer, a major general in the Nigerian military, which is the leading military in the whole of Africa, will at the end of the day be talking about his men doing the best, when the best simply means increasing killings exactly. On a daily basis.
I don't know whether Nigerian military is the leading military in the whole of Africa. We don't have empirical evidence to support that.
No, we do have.
In the past, maybe not now. They've gotten
on the basis of the
foreign
United
policy
Nations.
talk, Prof, right?
When it comes to the United Nations level, whenever there are problems in Africa,
that was historically.
It's not just historically. Look.
Even now.
No, please. When it comes to maintenance. Even now, yeah, okay. They will still call on us.
Okay.
That's where this issue of conspiratorial theories come in, that the military might truly constitute a sabotage.
Anyway, quickly, Yemi, I was going to come to you.
Yes, please.
There was something the president said, I mean, in the context of that interaction that he had with State House correspondents. He said his government faces the challenge of abuse of trust by certain persons who have been saddled with responsibilities. Is it abuse of trust that we're dealing with, really? Either with the military or with the NDDC and other issues that are coming up?
Regardless, the abuse of trust means that you are not holding them accountable. So if people have abused that trust, even within the military, as you said, Borno State government has indicted the military. If there's no investigation to find out what happened and nobody's made to pay the price, then that's what it means. People abuse trust that they can abuse because there's no penalty. And because the buck stops at the table of the president, because you are not holding them. We've been talking about this military for 3 or 4 years, and they're still there. So what's the incentive to do any better? But quickly, just wanted to comment on 2 things. One, we've also seen former members of the military opt out. I think an article said about 400 of them basically said, look, this is not the term.
356.
Thank you very much. This is not the military we signed up for.
They've lost interest.
They've lost interest because it's not fulfilling their needs. And you're sending people out to defend a country.
And they are warning them of mutiny, don't engage in mutiny and all those things.
Precisely. So that's a problem. And then secondly, the comment by former Senator Ndume, around the fact that he doesn't think Boko Haram should be reintegrated. Now, it's strikingly because he was alleged at some point and later sort of acquitted to be part of the people behind Boko Haram, number one. Number two, but for someone who's from that place to say that all this charade of supposedly rehabilitating them is not working is something we should take very seriously. Because if we claim to rehabilitate them, put them back in society, recruit them back into our security services, we're setting ourselves up for more trouble.
Well, Chike, are you there? Your thoughts on de-radicalization and reintegration of repentant Boko Haramists, as they are called, and then the issue of trust that Yemi addressed earlier?
Well, definitely, I don't understand how, you intentionally inflict more damage on yourself. Because we have this situation where we know that these people are radicalized in their minds. It's not about their outlook or whatever. There was one of them who, after he had gone through the de-radicalization process, actually got to his house and maybe killed his father or killed his mother or whatever. So, that for me is definitely not the way to go. We didn't do this when we had the issues with the militants or whatever. You even if you have to do you de-radicalize them, you put them somewhere for a long time and watch and see how because like I said, we are talking about their minds. And then in the case of the issue of the trust, I don't see how the president can tell us that people he's put in positions of trust have disappointed the nation and yet they are still there.
Exactly.
What are we saying? The buck should stop somewhere. He should do the right thing and get these people to face the law for every trust that has been abused. That is the only way you can go forward in this country.
On that note, thank you very much, Chike Ogea. Thank you, Professor Bola Akintenwa. And thank you, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director. Enough is enough. You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We see you next Sunday.